Neat book out titled The Executioner's Current, published by Richard Moran in 2003. The Executioner's Current. Richard Moran's book is all about the contest between Edison and Westinghouse for what kind of currency was going to, what kind of electric current was going to be used in households. And Edison cooked up a scheme to get the electric chair in New York to be powered by alternating current, because he was sure that once people saw the electric chair kill people, they would never want that current running through their houses, and they would go with DC instead of AC. Edison was wrong. He was wrong for a lot of reasons. People enjoyed the idea of the electric chair and all of its viciousness and brutality. But in the book, Moran talks about his witness to an execution. I had been a friend of Richard's prior to moving to Texas, and the man who was getting ready to be executed, his name was Thomas Barefoot, who was executed on October 30th in 1984. I moved to Texas in August of 1984, and Barefoot had been requesting to have his execution televised. He believed it was public execution, and like Camus, he wanted it to be televised. They're publicly available. And Texas was afraid that they were going to have to televise an electrocution, so they moved to lethal injection. And in the process, I was able to get invited. This was before Texas got rigid in its execution protocol. I was invited, and Richard Moran was invited to witness the execution. We showed up at shortly before midnight, and for some reason, I felt like it was just simply wrong. I didn't feel invited to the execution, so I chose not to go in. Richard Moran went in because at that time he was writing a book on public execution, and he thought this would be a good way to finalize the book. He ends up describing the experience in this Executioner's Current, and I call your attention to it. I'm not going to read it to you, but I recommend that you read it, because Richard Moran went in intending to write a book about public executions, and when he came out, he was shaken, not unlike Camus' father, and he was drawn instead to begin writing articles and publishing articles in popular newspapers about the horror of lethal injection and the inhumanity of this way of putting men down, as it's referred to by the correctional officers. As I said, we had executed 3 people before I moved to Texas in 1982. We've executed a total of 316 at the end of this year. As I said, we'll execute 5 more between now and December 14th, making a total of 27 this year. And I've been present on the corner of 12th Street and Avenue I for about 90% of them. I always tell people I don't let the state control me that much. And so I go when I'm available, and I'm available most of the time. And so I figure I've been to over 285 executions. Pete and Vic were both at SAM, and I know there are others of you, but I remembered their particular tenure. The entire time Pete Kraska was in Texas for about 6 years, about that. The entire time Pete Kraska was in Texas, we executed 27 people. The entire time Vic Kapler was in Texas, we executed 13 people. We executed 27 this year. The numbers are horrific. The abattoir is alive and well. I'm just going to read you prior to 1996, because that's a critical period. The number of executions every year are like this: 1, 3, 6, 3, 4, 4, 5, 12, 17, 19, and then 3. We executed 3 people in 1996 because President Clinton's Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act had been put into law, but the Supreme Court hadn't yet ruled whether it was constitutional to deny inmates access to habeas petitions the way that the Effective Death Penalty Act was. So we only executed 3 people, 2 of whom were volunteers, 1 of whom was executed after the Supreme Court said it's a go. This Anti-Death Penalty Act works, it's constitutional. And in 1997, we executed 37 people after having executed 3. In 1998, 20, and then 35, and then 40, and then 17, and then 33, and this year, 27. And the machine continues to roll on. And what I try to do when I'm standing on the corner of death, and when I'm standing there, the experiences I have are manifold, and I'll talk about them some in question-answer format, because I did promise that I'd get you there. But what I try to do is I try to invoke that co-intentional education that Freire calls for. And I talk about trying to liberate the oppressors as well as the oppressed. There's a, I call it neat, there's a horrific audio clip you can listen to. If you go to soundportraits.org, soundportraits.org. This is the image that you see when you get there. They've got an audio thing called Witness to an Execution. And I show this because of two things. I'm going to talk about this man and the horror that he experienced as a member of the tie-down squad. This woman is my grandson's mother. I'm raising my grandson. He's a child of mine. His mother had put him up for adoption, and through a lot of stuff, we ended up with him. She works for the prison system, and these two people are leaving Texas's execution chamber following the execution of Carla Tucker. My grandson's mother was one of the tie-down squad, the people who tied Carla Tucker to the gurney that you saw earlier and helped administer her lethal injection. This particular individual's name is Fred Allen, who used to be part of the tie-down squad, and he participated in 120 executions before he resigned. And the last execution he participated in was Carla Tucker's killing. And he ends up having a nervous breakdown. And you'll listen to his, I can't give power to his words, but go to soundportraits.org and click on it and listen to, it's a 28-minute clip, but at the end of the clip there's his story. And he says the following. He says, I was just working in the shop at home. He was working in the wood shop. I was just working in the shop, and all of a sudden something was triggered in me. I started shaking, and then I walked back into the house, and my wife asked, what's the matter? And I said, I don't feel good. And tears, uncontrollable tears was coming out of my eyes. And she said, what's the matter? And I said, I just thought about that execution I did 2 days ago, and everybody else's that I was involved with. And what it was something triggered within me. Everybody, all these executions, all of a sudden just sprung forward. Just like taking slides in a film projector and having a button, that pushing the button and just watching over and over, him, him, him. I don't know if it's a mental breakdown. I don't know if probably would be classified more as traumatic stress, similar to what individuals in war had. You know, they'd come back from war. It might be 3 months, it might be 2 years, it might be 5 years. All of a sudden, they relive it again and again, and all that has come out. You see, I can barely even talk because I'm thinking more and more of it. You know, there was just so many of them. My main concern is right now in these other individuals. I hope that it doesn't happen to them, the ones that participate, the ones that go through this procedure now. And I will honestly say, and I believe very sincerely, somewhere down the line, something is going to trigger. Everybody has a stopping point. Everybody has a certain level. That's all there is to it. Fred Allen resigned, retired from the Texas prison system 2 days after executing Carla Tucker, before the execution of another man. And if you saw the execution of Carla Tucker, there were about 3,000 people on the corner protesting, most of them in support. 2 days later, a born-again Christian male was executed, and I was alone on the corner. There was no one else there. And so I try to work with the people. I talk to the correctional officers who are in my classes, and I talk to my wife's, or my grandson's mother about the oppression that she's experiencing. It's also worth noting right now that her name is Gina. Gina is also a member of the Army Reserves that was activated, and Saturday following Thanksgiving she shipped out to Iraq. Maybe there's something that she'll be thinking about more. I have a small talk that I do often in my general community called The History of Executions in Texas, Necrophilia East Texas style. And I'm a little bit more to the point than Camus. I don't believe it's sadism that drives us. I believe it's a necrophilia. It's almost a passionate attraction to death than killing. It's more about death, I believe. I also try to engage in what I call what Fred calls emancipatory praxis while I'm on the corner. I'm going to show you, and I know you can't see much on the clips, and I'll give you a larger clip of these guys in a minute, but I'm giving you these because of they're just 3 quick stories of my experiences on the corner, dealing not with the oppressor, but with the oppressed, with people who are part of the machine that is being, the abattoir that is oppressing them.